an original story created exclusively for Golden Romance Empire. Olivia Bennett clutched her worn portfolio tighter as the elevator ascended the gleaming tower. Her reflection fractured in the mirrored walls, showing dark circles beneath determined eyes. 48 rejection emails, 6 final notices, and 1 desperate call from her mother's doctor had led her here. Her last chance. The doors opened to reveal a labyrinth of glass offices. But as she glanced down at her phone to check the interview suite number, she took the wrong hallway, pushing through heavy double doors that weren't supposed to open for her. The expansive corner office fell silent behind a massive desk. A man with piercing gray eyes and shoulders that carried invisible weight looked up from a stack of contracts, his gaze locked onto hers with unsettling recognition, and the corners of his mouth lifted in what wasn't quite a smile. "You're late," Alexander Blackwood said, his voice both ice and fire. "I've been waiting for you." Olivia froze in the doorway, confusion washing over her. "I'm sorry. There must be some mistake. I'm here for the executive assistant interview on the 14th floor." The man behind the desk, Alexander Blackwood, according to the nameplate, studied her with narrowed eyes. He was impeccably dressed in a tailored suit that probably cost more than her rent for a year. Power radiated from him like heat from a furnace. "The assistant interviews are down the hall," he said, his voice controlled but sharp. "This is the CEO's office, and you are." "Olivia Bennett," she replied, already backing toward the door. "I apologize for the interruption." Something shifted in his expression. "Wait," he commanded, flipping open a folder on his desk. "Olivia Bennett, 28, MBA from State, specialized in financial management." Her hand stilled on the doorknob. "Yes, but how did you—" "Sit down, Ms. Bennett. It wasn't a request." Against her better judgment, Olivia moved toward the chair he indicated. The plush leather felt foreign beneath her budget suit. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows behind him, the city sprawled like a kingdom at his feet. "This is unexpected," Alexander muttered, more to himself than to her. He studied the file, then her face, then back to the file. "The timing is either suspicious or serendipitous." "I don't understand," Olivia said, her interview confidence evaporating. "I applied for the assistant position. I should be meeting with HR, not the CEO." Alexander leaned forward, elbows on his desk. "Ms. Bennett, I was expecting someone today. Someone named Olivia Bennett, with your exact credentials, but not for an assistant position." He slid a document across the polished surface. Olivia glanced down and saw her name, her photo, and details about her life she'd never shared with this company. "What is this?" she asked, alarm rising in her throat. "A marriage contract," Alexander replied simply. "I've been waiting for you, Ms. Bennett. Just not the you who walked through my door today." The world tilted beneath Olivia. "A marriage contract. This is insane. I need to leave." "Before you do," Alexander cut in, "let me offer you something better than an assistant position." His eyes held hers, unblinking. "How does $5 million sound?" Olivia's breath caught. "For what?" "For becoming my wife." "This is completely insane," Olivia said, pacing the length of Alexander's office. "You can't possibly be serious." Alexander remained seated, watching her with calculated patience. "I assure you, Ms. Bennett, I'm entirely serious, and I believe once you understand the situation, you might find it less outrageous than it seems." "Enlighten me, then," she challenged, stopping to face him. "My grandfather is dying," he stated, his voice clinical despite the weight of the words. "He built this company from nothing, and according to his will, control passes to me only if I'm married by his 80th birthday, which is exactly 3 weeks from today. And if you're not, then my cousin Marcus gets everything." A muscle in Alexander's jaw tightened. He would dismantle 50 years of work in 6 months for quick profit. Olivia crossed her arms. "So you arranged a marriage with someone who conveniently shares my name, but has disappeared?" "Essentially, yes." Alexander stood and walked to the window. "The woman who agreed to the arrangement, another Olivia Bennett, took her advance payment and vanished 2 days ago. And now you're offering the position to me, a complete stranger. A qualified stranger who walked through my door at precisely the right moment." He turned to face her. 1 year of marriage, $5 million when we divorce, complete confidentiality. Olivia laughed without humor. You're out of your mind. Am I? Alexander picked up another file from his desk and handed it to her. Your mother needs specialized cardiac surgery. Your insurance denied the claim. You've been rejected from 48 jobs in 3 months. Your student loans are in default, and you have exactly $267 in your checking account. Olivia's blood ran cold. How do you know all this? I had my team run a background check the moment you sat down. I don't make $5 million offers lightly. She wanted to be outraged at the invasion of privacy. But the truth of her desperate situation washed over her. Her mother's condition was deteriorating daily. The medication was barely working. Without surgery. It would be a business arrangement, Alexander continued. Nothing more. Separate bedrooms, public appearances as needed. After a year, we quietly divorce, and you walk away with financial freedom and a reference that will open any door in this city. Olivia's mind raced. It was madness, complete madness. Yet she couldn't stop calculating what that money would mean. Her mother's surgery, the best care, their debts erased. A fresh start. What about your grandfather? She asked quietly. You'd lie to a dying man. Something flickered in Alexander's eyes, the first genuine emotion she'd seen. My grandfather built this company to last generations. Marcus would destroy that legacy. Sometimes protection requires compromise. I need time to think, Olivia said. You have until tomorrow morning. Alexander handed her a business card, my private number. And Miss Bennett, he paused. If you agree, there's one condition I need to add. What's that? You need to meet my grandfather before signing anything. If he doesn't believe we're genuinely together, this won't work. Olivia stared at the card in her hand, the embossed letters catching the light. And if I say no, then the assistant position is yours, with a generous salary. His expression remained unreadable, but not generous enough to save your mother. The choice is yours. The Blackwood estate sprawled across 5 acres of manicured gardens, the main house rising like something from another century. Olivia sat rigid in the passenger seat of Alexander's Bentley, her heart hammering against her ribs. Remember what we discussed, Alexander said as they approached the circular drive. We met 6 months ago at a charity gala. You were consulting for a tech startup. We kept it quiet because of the company's transition period. I know the script, Olivia replied, smoothing her borrowed dress, a simple but elegant navy blue that probably cost more than her monthly rent. But I still have questions. Why would your grandfather believe you suddenly have a fiancé he's never heard of? Alexander's hands tightened on the steering wheel. My grandfather has been ill. I've kept my personal life separate from family matters. It won't seem unusual. The car stopped before grand double doors. A silver-haired butler appeared, his expression warming at the sight of Alexander. Mr. Blackwood, welcome home. Thank you, Edison. Is my grandfather in the conservatory? Yes, sir. He's having a good day. Alexander's shoulders relaxed slightly. He turned to Olivia, his eyes suddenly intense. Last chance to back out. She thought of her mother in the hospital bed, of the mounting bills, of the surgery that could save her life. I'm here, aren't I? The conservatory was a cathedral of glass and greenery, sunlight filtering through exotic plants to create dappled patterns on the marble floor. In the center, seated in a leather chair, was Harold Blackwood. Though clearly frail, the elder Blackwood carried himself with dignity, his eyes sharp and alert beneath bushy white brows. Alexander, he called, his voice stronger than his appearance suggested. And who is this lovely young woman? Alexander's hand found the small of Olivia's back, guiding her forward. The touch was meant for show, but it sent an unexpected warmth through her. Grandfather, this is Olivia Bennett, my fiancée. Harold's eyes widened, then crinkled with delight. Fiancé, Alexander, you sly devil. He extended a weathered hand to Olivia. Come closer, my dear. Let me look at the woman who's captured my grandson's heart. Olivia stepped forward, taking his hand. It was warm and papery, but his grip was surprisingly firm. Up close, she could see Alexander in his features, the same strong jaw, the same penetrating gaze. It's an honor to meet you, Mr. Blackwood, she said, and was surprised to find she meant it. Harold, please. We're to be family. He studied her face. How did you two meet? Alexander never tells me anything about his life outside these boardrooms. Olivia recited their rehearsed story. But as she spoke, something shifted in her chest. The lie felt heavier in Harold's presence. His genuine joy at meeting her a burden she hadn't anticipated. "And when is the wedding?" Harold asked, looking between them. 2 weeks from Saturday," Alexander answered smoothly. "Small ceremony. Given your health, we wanted to ensure you could be there." Harold's eyes misted. "You have no idea what this means to me, Alexander. To see you settled. With someone who clearly cares for you. It's all I've wanted." Guilt crashed over Olivia like a wave. This kind old man believed every word, and worse. He was visibly moved by it. She glanced at Alexander and saw his mask slip for just a moment, revealing something that looked almost like remorse. "Stay for dinner," Harold insisted. "I want to hear everything about you, Olivia. What you do, what you love, how you've managed to bring light into my grandson's eyes." As they followed Harold to the dining room, Olivia whispered to Alexander, "I didn't expect him to be so human," Alexander supplied, his voice low. "Everyone sees the business titan. Few remember, he's also a man who's lost too much." He hesitated. "My grandmother, my parents. He fears dying alone, the last of his line." For the first time, Olivia saw beyond Alexander's cold exterior to the weight he carried. This wasn't just about money or power. It was about family, legacy, and a promise to a man who had already lost everyone else he loved. During dinner, Harold shared stories of Alexander as a child, serious even then, always with a book, always asking questions. Alexander's discomfort was evident, but there was affection in his irritation. When Harold began to tire, Alexander noticed immediately, calling for the evening to end. As they prepared to leave, Harold took Olivia's hands in his. "You've brought joy to this house tonight, my dear. I can see why Alexander chose you." The words pierced her. In the car, silence stretched between them until Alexander finally spoke. "Well, have you made your decision?" Olivia stared out at the passing lights. "I'll sign the contract, but I want my mother's surgery scheduled immediately. Not after the wedding, and I want everything in writing, including the exit terms." Alexander nodded. "Done. We'll sign the papers tomorrow." "One more thing," Olivia said, turning to face him. "I won't lie to your grandfather again without something real behind it. If we're doing this, you need to tell me the truth about everything. No more surprises." For a moment, she thought he would refuse. Then, almost imperceptibly, he nodded. No more surprises. The wedding was a masterpiece of elegant deception. Alexander's team had transformed the rooftop garden of his building into an intimate paradise of white orchids and twinkling lights. Only 30 guests attended: Harold, a few key board members, and carefully selected friends who wouldn't ask too many questions. Olivia's mother, still recovering from her successful surgery, sat in a place of honor, believing her daughter had found a whirlwind romance while visiting her in the hospital. "He came to check on me every day," her mother had marveled when Olivia finally told her a sanitized version of the truth, that she'd met Alexander during her job search, and things had moved quickly. Such a thoughtful man. Olivia hadn't known about those visits. It was one of many gestures Alexander had made behind the scenes, never mentioning them, never seeking credit. Now, as she stood in a private suite preparing for the ceremony, Olivia hardly recognized herself. The wedding dress, an elegant sheath of ivory silk, had been selected by a stylist. Her hair was arranged in soft waves, her makeup subtle but flawless. The woman in the mirror looked like she belonged in Alexander's world. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. She expected the wedding planner, but instead found Alexander, breaking tradition by seeing her before the ceremony. "You're not supposed to be here," she said, surprised. "I know." He looked unusually tense in his perfectly tailored tuxedo. "I wanted to give you this before we go out there." He handed her a small velvet box. Inside was a delicate diamond bracelet that caught the light in prismatic bursts. "It's beautiful," she said, genuinely touched, "but not necessary for the show." "It's not for show." Alexander took the bracelet and fastened it around her wrist. "It belonged to my grandmother. My grandfather mentioned she would have wanted you to have something of hers today." Olivia's throat tightened. "Alexander, I can't accept this. This isn't—" He finished, his fingers lingering on her wrist. Perhaps not the circumstances, but my grandfather's happiness is real, and your mother's recovery is real. Some true things can come from false beginnings. Before she could respond, he stepped back, professional distance returning to his demeanor. The ceremony starts in 10 minutes. I'll see you out there. The wedding itself passed in a blur. Olivia walked down the aisle alone, feeling every eye upon her. Alexander waited at the end, his expression unreadable. They exchanged vows with practiced sincerity, gold bands sliding onto fingers that had never touched until this moment. You may kiss the bride, the officiant announced. They had discussed this moment clinically during preparations. A brief, chaste kiss for appearance's sake. But as Alexander leaned in, something shifted. His hand gently cupped her cheek, and the kiss he placed on her lips was soft, lingering just a moment longer than necessary. It wasn't passionate, but neither was it the mechanical performance they'd planned. When he pulled away, confusion flickered in his eyes, quickly masked. At the reception, they moved as a unit, Alexander's hand rarely leaving the small of her back. They danced their first dance to a song she'd never heard before, his body a respectful distance from hers, despite the intimacy of the moment. "You're a natural," he murmured as they swayed. "Everyone believes we're madly in love." "Years of customer service," she replied with a small smile. "I can fake anything." Something like disappointment crossed his features before he smoothed it away. Later, Harold approached them, his eyes bright with emotion. "I haven't seen such a beautiful couple since my own wedding day," he said, embracing them both. "Alexander, your parents would be so proud of the man you've become." Alexander's body tensed beside her. "Thank you, grandfather." As the evening wound down, Olivia found herself on the terrace, stealing a moment alone. The city lights stretched before her, a glittering carpet at her feet. She twisted the wedding ring on her finger, the weight of it still unfamiliar. "Penny for your thoughts, Mrs. Blackwood." She turned to find Alexander watching her, 2 champagne flutes in hand. He offered one to her. "Just taking a breath," she said, accepting the glass. "It's been intense." Indeed. He stood beside her at the railing. "For what it's worth, you were exceptional today. My grandfather is completely convinced. That was the goal, wasn't it?" "Yes." Alexander sipped his champagne. "The penthouse has been prepared for you. Your things were moved in yesterday." Reality crashed back. They were married now, legally bound in a union, built on convenience and desperation. "Separate bedrooms as agreed," he continued. "Your suite has its own entrance and living area. You'll have complete privacy." "And what happens tomorrow?" Olivia asked. "Tomorrow we begin our life as the happily married Blackwoods." Alexander's gaze was steady. "Public appearances, charity functions, family dinners. Between events, you're free to do as you please. And us, in private." Something flickered in his eyes. "We're business partners, Olivia. Nothing more." But as they clinked glasses under the stars, both wearing rings that symbolized a promise neither meant to keep, Olivia couldn't help wondering if that was entirely true. The kiss, that unplanned moment of genuine connection, lingered in her mind like a question without an answer. 3 months into their marriage, the facade began to crack. It started with whispers at a charity gala, curious glances, and hushed conversations that fell silent when they approached. Alexander dismissed it as typical society gossip, but Olivia sensed something more targeted. Her suspicions were confirmed the next morning, when Alexander stormed into her suite, tablet in hand. On the screen was a gossip blog with the headline, "Blackwood Marriage, Business Merger or Love Match?" "This is Marcus's doing," Alexander said, his voice tight with controlled fury. "He's planting doubts about our relationship." Olivia scanned the article, her stomach sinking. It questioned the timing of their marriage, noting its convenience, just before Harold's birthday deadline. It mentioned her previous financial struggles and suggested she was nothing more than a contract bride, secured to fulfill inheritance requirements. "How would they know about my finances?" she asked. "Marcus has always had unsavory connections in the media." Alexander paced the room. "He's making his move. If he can prove our marriage is fraudulent, he can challenge the inheritance. Can he do that? Not without evidence, but he can create enough doubt to worry the board." Alexander ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of frustration. We need to counter this immediately. That afternoon, they attended an emergency meeting with Alexander's PR team. The strategy was aggressive. More public appearances, intimate interviews, social media presence, all designed to showcase their love story. The public needs to see you as inseparable, the PR director explained. Completely devoted. We've been careful to maintain professional boundaries, Alexander said, glancing at Olivia. Too careful, the director replied bluntly. No one believes you're newlyweds. You act like polite acquaintances. That ends today. Their first test came that evening at a business dinner with key investors. As they entered the restaurant, Alexander's hand slid from Olivia's back to her waist, pulling her closer than he ever had before. Is this okay? He murmured against her ear, his breath warm on her skin. She nodded, hyper-aware of his proximity, whatever it takes. Throughout dinner, they performed their new roles flawlessly. Alexander kept her close, their chairs touching. His fingers intertwined with hers on the table. He looked at her when she spoke, with an attentiveness that felt almost real. For her part, Olivia leaned into his touch, laughed at his rare attempts at humor, and called him darling with practiced ease. By dessert, the skeptical glances had transformed into knowing smiles. They were convincing everyone, perhaps even themselves. The real challenge came 3 days later, when Marcus himself appeared at a board meeting, tall and polished, with the same Blackwood features softened into something more conventionally handsome. He greeted Alexander with a shark's smile. "Cousin," he said, embracing Alexander with false warmth. "And the lovely new Mrs. Blackwood." His eyes assessed Olivia coldly. "How fortunate you two found each other just in time." "Marcus," Alexander acknowledged, his arm tightening around Olivia. "I wasn't aware you were attending today." "Oh, I wouldn't miss it. After all, family should support family." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "And I'm so looking forward to getting to know your bride better, perhaps dinner sometime. I have so many questions about your whirlwind romance." Before Alexander could respond, Olivia stepped forward. "We'd love that, Marcus. And I have questions too, like why you're so interested in undermining your cousin's happiness. Family supporting family, as you said." Marcus's smile faltered. "Direct, isn't she?" he said to Alexander. "One of the many reasons I fell in love with her," Alexander replied smoothly. The meeting proceeded with thinly veiled tension. Afterward, in the privacy of Alexander's office, Olivia finally exhaled. "He's dangerous," she said. "Yes." Alexander loosened his tie. "And he won't stop with one article. We need to be prepared for worse." "Like what?" "Private investigators, paid informants. He'll look for any crack in our story." Alexander's expression darkened. "We need to be more convincing than ever." "How?" "We're already playing the devoted couple." Alexander hesitated. "We need to eliminate any distance between us, at least in public." "Meaning?" "Meaning we can't return to separate lives behind closed doors. Not completely. Staff talk, drivers observe. Anyone could be reporting to Marcus. The implications hung between them. Their carefully constructed boundaries would need to blur. So what now?" Olivia asked. "Now we become what everyone already thinks we are." Alexander's gaze met hers. "We become a real couple in every way except the truth." The call came at 3:17 a.m., shattering the pre-dawn silence of the penthouse. Alexander answered, his voice instantly alert despite the hour. Olivia, who had been reading in her suite, heard his sharp intake of breath through the wall that separated their rooms. She found him in the hallway, already pulling on a jacket, his face pale in the dim light. "What's happened?" she asked. "Grandfather," the word came out strained. "He's had a stroke. They've taken him to Memorial Hospital." Without hesitation, Olivia grabbed her coat. "I'm coming with you." In the car, Alexander was silent, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Olivia wanted to reach for his hand, but wasn't sure if the gesture would be welcome. Their new closeness had been carefully performed in public. But in private moments like this, the boundaries remained uncertain. The hospital corridors were blindingly bright after the darkness outside. A doctor met them, her expression grave as she explained Harold's condition. "The next 24 hours are critical," she concluded. "He's stable for now, but unconscious. You can see him briefly." Harold looked diminished against the white hospital sheets, tubes and monitors surrounding him like a technological fortress. Alexander froze in the doorway, his composure finally cracking. Olivia gently pushed him forward, her hand on the small of his back, the same supportive gesture he'd used with her countless times. "Talk to him," she encouraged softly. "They say people can hear, even when they're unconscious." Alexander approached the bed, taking his grandfather's hand with uncharacteristic gentleness. "I'm here, grandfather," he said, his voice barely audible. "You need to fight. The company needs you." He stopped, swallowing hard. "I need you." Olivia waited by the door, feeling like an intruder in this raw family moment. After a few minutes, Alexander straightened, his mask of control slipping back into place. "You should go home," he told her. "Get some rest, I'll stay." "I'm not leaving," Olivia replied firmly. "He's my family now, too." Something flickered in Alexander's eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or gratitude. He didn't argue. They settled into the uncomfortable chairs of the waiting room as hours stretched into morning. Alexander made calls, rearranging meetings, and issuing directives to his executive team. Olivia brought coffee, fielded messages, and created a buffer between Alexander and the well-meaning hospital staff. By afternoon, Harold remained unchanged. Exhaustion etched lines around Alexander's eyes as he stared at nothing, his coffee growing cold in his hands. "You should rest," Olivia said gently. "Even just for an hour." "I can't." "Then at least eat something. You'll be no use to him if you collapse." Alexander looked up, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. "You sound like him. He always said I worked too hard, cared too little about my own needs." "Was he right?" "Usually." Alexander set down his coffee. "He raised me after my parents died. Did I ever tell you that?" "No," Olivia said, realizing how little she actually knew about her husband's past. "Car accident. I was 8. His voice was detached, clinical. "My grandfather became everything, father, mentor, the only constant in my life. He built the company while raising me. Never missed a school event, despite running a global corporation. He loves you very much," Olivia said softly, "and I've repaid that love with deception." Bitterness edged into his tone. "Our marriage, the very thing that brought him so much joy, is a lie." "Not entirely," Olivia found herself saying. "We may have married for the wrong reasons, but we've become something. Partners, at least." Alexander studied her face. "Is that what we are?" Before she could answer, the doctor appeared, bringing news that Harold was showing signs of responsiveness. They hurried to his room, where Harold's eyes were open, though unfocused. "Grandfather." Alexander leaned close. Harold's gaze slowly found Alexander's face. His lips moved, but no sound emerged. The doctor explained he might have difficulty speaking for a while. "Don't try to talk," Alexander said. "Just rest. I'm not going anywhere." Harold's eyes shifted to Olivia, and a weak smile touched his lips. With effort, he raised his hand slightly. Olivia took it, surprised by the strength still present in his grip. "We're both here," she assured him. "Everything's going to be all right." Harold's gaze moved between them, and with obvious effort, he managed to whisper, "Truth." Alexander tensed beside her. "What is it, grandfather?" Harold's fingers tightened around Olivia's hand. "I know, the truth." The room seemed to freeze. Alexander went perfectly still. "About what?" he asked carefully. "Your marriage." Harold's voice was barely audible. It began as business. Olivia felt the blood drain from her face. Alexander looked stricken. "But now," Harold continued, each word an effort, "I see real love." Relief flooded through Olivia, followed immediately by confusion. She glanced at Alexander, whose expression was unreadable. "Don't waste time," Harold whispered. "Life is short." The doctor stepped forward, indicating they should let Harold rest. In the hallway, Alexander leaned against the wall, his composure finally shattering. Olivia had never seen him like this. Vulnerable, exposed, the carefully constructed walls crumbling. "He knew," Alexander said, his voice hollow, "all this time." "But he sees something real now," Olivia said quietly. "Something we didn't plan for." Alexander looked at her, really looked at her, perhaps for the first time. "Is there something real?" The question hung between them, weighted with months of performed intimacy, of boundaries crossed and redrawn, of moments that had begun as acting, but ended in something neither of them had named. Before Olivia could answer, Alexander's phone rang, the board, demanding updates. The moment shattered, reality intruding once more. But as they walked back to Harold's room, Alexander's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining without cameras or audiences to perform for. It was a small gesture, but in it lay the beginning of an answer. The penthouse was silent when they finally returned home. Harold stable enough for them to leave his side. Exhaustion weighed on them both. But a new tension hummed beneath the surface, questions unasked, truths half acknowledged in a hospital hallway. "You should get some sleep," Alexander said, loosening his tie. "It's been a long day." "So should you," Olivia replied, but neither moved toward their separate wings of the penthouse. Instead, Alexander walked to the wall of windows overlooking the city. Lights glittered against the darkness, a constellation of human lives continuing, while theirs seemed suspended in this moment. "My grandfather has always seen through me," he finally said. "Even as a child, I could never hide anything from him. I should have known he'd see through our arrangement." Olivia joined him at the window. "He loves you. He wants you to be happy. And what about you, Olivia?" Alexander turned to face her. "What do you want?" The question caught her off guard. In all their negotiations and performances, no one had asked what she wanted beyond financial security. "I don't know anymore," she admitted. "When I agreed to this marriage, everything seemed clear. A business arrangement, a means to an end." She hesitated. "But now," Alexander prompted, his voice unusually gentle. "Now the lines have blurred." Olivia met his gaze. "I came into your life by accident, but being your wife doesn't feel like an act anymore. Not completely." Alexander's expression softened. "No, it doesn't." He moved closer, cautiously, as if approaching something fragile. His hand rose to her face, fingers tracing her cheekbone with a tenderness that made her breath catch. "I've spent my life building walls," he said quietly, "protecting myself, the company, my grandfather's legacy. I thought this marriage was just another wall, a shield against Marcus, against losing everything." His thumb brushed her lower lip. "I never expected you to break through." "Is that what I've done?" Olivia whispered. "You've done what no one else could." His eyes held hers, vulnerable in a way she'd never seen before. "You've made me want something beyond contracts and conditions, something real." The confession hung between them, honest and exposed. Olivia realized they'd been moving toward this moment for months. Each performed touch becoming more genuine, each public kiss lasting a heartbeat longer, each shared glance holding something neither been ready to name. "The contract," she began, but Alexander shook his head. "To hell with the contract." His lips found hers, not for show, not for cameras or family or business associates. This kiss was private, meant only for them, tentative at first, then deepening as months of restrained feeling finally broke free. Olivia's arms wound around his neck, drawing him closer as the last walls between them crumbled. They pulled apart, breathless, foreheads touching. "I want to tear up that contract," Alexander said, his voice rough with emotion. "Start over, not as a business arrangement, but as us, whatever that means. Whatever we want it to mean. What about the inheritance? The company? They matter, but not as much as this." His hands framed her face. "Not as much as you." That night, they talked for hours, really talked, about childhoods and dreams, fears and hopes. Alexander spoke of the loneliness after his parents died, how he'd channeled grief into ambition. Olivia shared her struggles supporting her mother, the weight of responsibility she'd carried since her father abandoned them. As dawn broke over the city, they lay together in Alexander's bed, the physical and emotional distance between them finally bridged. The contract that had brought them together now seemed like a relic from another life, necessary once, but no longer defining what they had become. "We should rewrite it," Olivia murmured, her head on his chest, not as an exit strategy, but as a beginning. Alexander's fingers traced patterns on her bare shoulder. "What would it say?" "That we choose each other, not for money or security or business advantage, just for us." He kissed her forehead, a smile in his voice. "I think we just wrote our real vows." Outside, the city awakened to a new day. Inside, in the quiet of their shared space, something else awakened too. A marriage that had begun as illusion, but had somehow, against all odds, transformed into truth. The transformation was gradual, but unmistakable. Small changes accumulated like snowflakes, building something new and unexpected. Alexander began coming home earlier, trading late meetings for dinners with Olivia. His home office, once a fortress of solitude, now often had her curled in the corner armchair, reading while he worked. For her part, Olivia found herself truly becoming Mrs. Blackwood. She took an active interest in the company's charitable foundation, revitalizing programs that had languished under bureaucratic management. Her financial expertise proved valuable in ways neither had anticipated, her fresh perspective challenging Alexander's more traditional approach. "The board actually listened to me today," she told him one evening, surprise evident in her voice. "They approved the community investment initiative." Alexander smiled, loosening his tie as he joined her on the sofa. "Of course they did. Your proposal was brilliant. I thought they just saw me as your wife." "They did at first." He pulled her closer. "Now they see you as a force to be reckoned with, as do I." Their public appearances no longer required rehearsal or coaching. The affection between them was genuine, noticed by everyone around them. Harold, recovering steadily from his stroke, watched them with knowing satisfaction during their hospital visits. "I told you," he said to Alexander during one such visit, his speech improving daily. "Some arrangements become real if you let them." Alexander squeezed his grandfather's hand. "You were right, as usual." One rainy Tuesday, 4 months after their relationship had transformed, Olivia sat in her doctor's office, staring at the results in her hand. Pregnant, 6 weeks along. The news was unexpected. They had discussed children as a distant possibility, not an immediate reality. She spent the day in a daze, unsure how Alexander would react. Their relationship had evolved so quickly from business to love. Was he ready for this next step? Was she? That evening, she arranged a private dinner at home, dismissing the staff early. Alexander arrived promptly at 7, earlier than his usual time. Another change from the workaholic she'd first married. "Something smells amazing," he said, kissing her hello. Then, noticing the candles and wine, he raised an eyebrow. "What's the occasion?" "Sit down," she said, suddenly nervous. "I have something to tell you." Concern crossed his features. "Is everything all right? Your mother is fine," she assured him. "This isn't bad news. At least I hope you won't think it is." She took a deep breath, then simply placed the test results on the table between them. Alexander looked down, confusion giving way to understanding as he read the report. For a moment, he was perfectly still. "You're pregnant," he said finally, his voice carefully neutral. Olivia nodded, trying to read his expression. "I know we hadn't planned this. Not yet. If you're not ready." Alexander was around the table before she could finish, pulling her to her feet and into his arms. "Ready? Olivia." He stopped, emotion overwhelming him. When he spoke again, his voice was thick. "A baby, our baby." The joy in his eyes dissolved her fears. He held her as if she were made of glass, his hand moving to rest gently on her still flat stomach. "I never thought I'd have this," he confessed. "A real family. Someone who chose me, not my name or my company. And now a child." He shook his head in wonder. "You've given me everything I never knew I wanted." The months that followed brought changes to the penthouse that once seemed as cold and impersonal as its owner. The spare room adjacent to their bedroom transformed into a nursery. Modern, minimalist furniture gave way to softer pieces. Photos appeared on once bare walls: their wedding, Harold's birthday celebration, Olivia's mother at Christmas dinner. Alexander approached fatherhood with the same intensity he brought to business, reading every parenting book he could find and attending every doctor's appointment. When they learned they were having a daughter, Olivia found him in the nursery late one night, assembling a crib with determined concentration. The instructions said professional installation recommended, she teased, leaning against the doorframe. "I run a global corporation. I can build a crib," he insisted, though the scattered parts suggested otherwise. Olivia sat on the floor beside him. "You know, we could have hired someone. I wanted to do this myself." Alexander set down the screwdriver. "My father never had the chance to build my crib. I want our daughter to know that I did this for her. That I was here from the beginning." Olivia's heart swelled. She took his hand, placing it on her growing belly where their daughter kicked vigorously. "She knows, trust me." As her due date approached, they settled into a new rhythm. The penthouse, once merely a showcase of wealth and status, had become a true home, lived in, warm, filled with evidence of their shared life. Even Alexander's prized minimalist aesthetic had yielded to baby books and tiny clothes. "I never thought I'd see the day," Harold remarked during a Sunday visit. His recovery had progressed remarkably. He now walked with just a cane. Alexander Blackwood, CEO and soon-to-be diaper changer. "Grandfather," Alexander protested. But his eyes crinkled with happiness. Harold patted Olivia's hand. "You've done what I thought impossible, my dear. You've given him something worth more than the company. A reason to come home." Later that night, as they lay in bed, Alexander's hand resting protectively over their daughter, Olivia reflected on the strange path that had led them here. One wrong turn, one mistaken door, had changed everything. "What are you thinking about?" Alexander murmured, half asleep. "How differently things might have gone if I'd found the right interview room that day." He pulled her closer. Then it would have been the wrong room after all. The board meeting was called with little warning. An urgent matter requiring immediate attention. Alexander knew what it meant before the email even arrived. Marcus was making his move. "He's gathered support," Alexander told Olivia as they prepared that morning. "3 board members have been avoiding my calls. That's never a good sign." "Can he really challenge your position after all this time?" Olivia asked, her hand resting on her 8-month pregnant belly. The company's stock dipped last quarter, not significantly, but enough to give him leverage. Alexander straightened his tie with practiced precision. "He'll argue that my focus on long-term stability and ethical practices is hurting short-term profits. And is it? By his metrics, yes. Marcus believes in aggressive expansion, cost-cutting at any expense, and quick returns for shareholders." Alexander's jaw tightened. He'd dismantle half the company within a year. Olivia stepped forward, adjusting his tie, though it needed no adjustment. "Then we won't let that happen." Alexander raised an eyebrow. "We? I'm coming with you. Olivia, you're 8 months pregnant, and still perfectly capable of attending a board meeting." Her expression brooked no argument. "This is our family's future, Alexander. Our daughter's inheritance. I'm not sitting this out." The boardroom fell silent when they entered together. 12 members sat around the massive table, with Marcus at the far end, a deliberate positioning opposite Alexander's usual chair. Harold was present too, his expression grave. "Alexander, Olivia." Marcus's smile was razor-sharp. "How thoughtful of you both to join us. Though I'm surprised to see you, Olivia, in your condition." "I wouldn't miss it," Olivia replied pleasantly, taking the seat Alexander held for her. The meeting began with Marcus wasting no time. He presented charts showing the company's recent performance compared to more aggressive competitors. The numbers, selectively chosen, painted a concerning picture. "The fact is," Marcus concluded, "under Alexander's leadership, we've become risk-averse and stagnant. His focus on sustainable growth and ethical practices sounds admirable, but shareholders want returns, not moral victories." Several board members nodded. Alexander remained impassive, but Olivia could feel the tension radiating from him. "I propose a strategic pivot," Marcus continued. "Aggressive expansion into emerging markets, streamlining of operations, including necessary workforce reductions, and a focus on quarterly growth above all else." "And what of the company's long-term stability?" Harold asked, speaking for the first time. "These streamlining measures you propose, they've destroyed other companies within years." "With respect, Uncle Harold," Marcus said smoothly, "business has changed since your day. Sentiment doesn't pay dividends." Alexander finally spoke, his voice calm but forceful. "What Marcus fails to mention is that our stagnant growth has weathered 3 market downturns that decimated our competitors. Our employee retention is the highest in the industry, saving millions in training and lost productivity. And our ethical practices have opened doors to partnerships closed to those less principled approaches. The boardroom temperature seemed to drop as the cousins locked eyes across the table. "Pretty words," Marcus said dismissively, "but the numbers don't lie. Under your leadership, Alexander, we've sacrificed profit for principles. I move for an immediate vote of confidence." It was a bold play, one that could remove Alexander as CEO if successful. Murmurs spread around the table as board members exchanged glances. "Before we vote," Olivia said suddenly, her voice cutting through the tension, "I'd like to address the board." Marcus smirked. "With all due respect, Mrs. Blackwood, this is a business matter, not a family one. I hold 3% of company shares," Olivia replied calmly. "And as Alexander's wife, I have a vested interest in this company's future. But more importantly," she opened the portfolio she'd brought, "I have data that Mr. Marcus Blackwood has conveniently omitted." She distributed documents to each board member. "These are projections based on Marcus's proposed strategies, applied to similar companies over the past decade. Initial growth, followed by catastrophic collapse within 3 to 5 years." The board members studied the papers with growing concern. "Additionally," Olivia continued, "I've included our current client retention rates compared to industry standards. Our ethical practices aren't just moral victories. They've secured loyalty from our top 20 clients, all of whom have publicly committed to working only with companies that maintain the standards Alexander has established." Alexander watched her with undisguised admiration as she systematically dismantled Marcus's arguments with precision and clarity. "Finally," Olivia concluded, "there's the matter of our employees. The workforce reductions Marcus proposes would eliminate the very innovation team that's developing our next generation of products projected to increase market share by 17% within 2 years. She placed her hand protectively over her belly. "The decision before you isn't just about next quarter's numbers. It's about what kind of company you want to build. One that burns bright and fast, or one that endures for generations." Her eyes met each board member's in turn. "One that our children and their children can be proud to inherit." A heavy silence fell over the room. Marcus's confidence had visibly faltered. "I believe," Harold said into the quiet, "that we've heard enough to make an informed decision. Shall we proceed with the vote?" The result wasn't even close. 10-2 in favor of maintaining Alexander's leadership, with a mandate to continue his balanced approach to growth and ethics. As the meeting adjourned, Marcus stormed out without a word. Board members stopped to congratulate Alexander, and notably Olivia, before departing. When only the 3 Blackwoods remained, Harold approached his grandson and granddaughter-in-law. "I always knew you were the right leader for this company, Alexander," he said, pride evident in his voice. "But today I realized something even more important. You found the right partner to stand beside you." He took Olivia's hand. "You fought not just for Alexander or the company, but for the future, for legacy." Alexander's arm tightened around Olivia's waist. "She's always been fighting for more than just herself. That's who she is." In the car ride home, Alexander was unusually quiet. Olivia watched the city pass by outside the window, giving him space with his thoughts. Finally, he spoke. "When I proposed our arrangement all those months ago, I thought I was saving my grandfather's company." He turned to look at her, his expression open and vulnerable. "I never imagined you would be the one to truly secure its future." Olivia smiled, taking his hand and placing it on her belly, where their daughter kicked vigorously. "We did it together. That's what partners do." "Partners," Alexander echoed, the word full of meaning beyond business and family. 5 years passed like the turning of pages in a well-loved book. The penthouse that had once seemed so sterile was now gloriously, chaotically alive. Toys scattered across Italian marble, finger paintings displayed alongside priceless art, the sound of small feet running down hallways, designed for power walks and business calls. Emma Grace Blackwood, now 4 years old, was her father's daughter in determination and her mother's in compassion. Her little brother, James Harold, had just celebrated his 2nd birthday, with a cake he'd mostly worn rather than eaten. On this particular evening, Alexander arrived home earlier than usual, finding Olivia in the kitchen attempting to salvage dinner after Emma's helpful addition of an entire container of cinnamon to the pasta sauce. "Daddy." Emma launched herself at him, and he caught her with practiced ease, swinging her into the air as she giggled. "There's my girl." His face transforming with the smile he reserved only for his family. "Have you been helping Mommy cook?" "I made it better," Emma declared proudly. "That's one word for it," Olivia laughed, accepting Alexander's kiss. "How was the meeting?" "Productive. The expansion is approved." He set Emma down and moved to the high chair where James babbled happily. "And how's the little chairman of the board?" "Demanding and uncompromising," Olivia replied with a grin. "Definitely a Blackwood. After dinner. Takeout, given the cinnamon catastrophe, and the chaotic bedtime routine that had become sacred in their household." Alexander and Olivia finally had a moment alone on the terrace. The city lights spread before them. The same view they'd shared on their wedding night, now seen through entirely different eyes. "Grandfather called today," Alexander said, his arm around Olivia as they sipped wine beneath the stars. "He wants us all at the estate this weekend. Says he has an announcement." "Is everything okay?" Olivia asked, concern edging her voice. Though Harold had recovered remarkably from his stroke years ago, his health remained a constant worry. "More than okay, I think," he sounded, happy, mysterious but happy. The weekend brought perfect autumn weather as they drove to the Blackwood estate. Emma chattered excitedly about seeing her great-grandfather, while James slept peacefully in his car seat. Harold greeted them at the door, looking more energetic than he had in months. At 85, he still carried himself with dignity, though he now relied more heavily on his cane. "There they are," he beamed, opening his arms to Emma, who ran to him with delighted squeals. "My favorite great-grandchildren." "They're your only great-grandchildren, grandfather," Alexander pointed out with a smile. "Details, details." Harold waved dismissively, then looked at Olivia with warm affection. "And how is my favorite granddaughter-in-law?" "Also your only granddaughter-in-law," Olivia laughed, embracing him. Over lunch in the sun-drenched conservatory, Harold watched his family with obvious contentment. Emma, the butler, served dessert. James babbled in his high chair, and Alexander and Olivia moved in the synchronized rhythm of partners who had built a life together. "I have something to tell you all," Harold announced as coffee was served. "I've made a decision." Alexander tensed slightly, always alert to changes where his grandfather was concerned. "I'm stepping down as chairman of the board," Harold continued, "effective next month." "Grandfather," Alexander began, but Harold raised a hand. "Let me finish, Alexander. I'm stepping down because it's time, because the company is in the best hands it could possibly be, yours and Olivia's, because I want to spend my remaining years watching these little ones grow, not reading quarterly reports." He looked between Alexander and Olivia, his eyes bright with emotion. "5 years ago, when you two first came to me as an engaged couple, I knew something wasn't quite right. The timing was too convenient, the story too perfect." He smiled at their startled expressions. "I've been in business for 60 years. I can spot a negotiated deal when I see one." "Grandfather, Alexander started, but Harold shook his head. "Let me finish. I saw the arrangement for what it was at first, but I also saw potential for something real, so I played along." His smile deepened. "And then the most remarkable thing happened. The performance became truth. The contract became covenant. I watched two people who married for convenience discover something far more valuable." Olivia reached for Alexander's hand beneath the table, finding it already reaching for hers. "Now look at you," Harold continued, gesturing to the children, to the easy way they leaned toward each other. "A family. A legacy that will outlast buildings and balance sheets." He raised his coffee cup in a toast. "To the wrong door that led exactly where you both needed to be." Later, as they walked the grounds while the children napped, Alexander and Olivia found themselves beneath the oak tree where they had taken their wedding photos. Once strangers bound by contract, now partners bound by choice. "Do you ever think about it?" Alexander asked, his arm around her waist. "How differently things might have gone if you'd found the right interview room that day." Olivia leaned into him, watching the afternoon light filter through autumn leaves. "Sometimes. But then I realize," she turned in his arms to face him, It was the right room after all. Just not for the reasons either of us understood then. Alexander's hand cupped her cheek, his touch still sending the same warmth through her as it had the first time. A business arrangement that became the best deal of my life. Of our lives, Olivia corrected, rising on tiptoes to kiss him. Not for show, not for cameras or family obligations, but for the simple joy of loving and being loved in return. Above them, the oak tree that had witnessed their beginning now sheltered a truth neither could have imagined on that first day. Sometimes the wrong turn leads to exactly the right destination. Sometimes a contract written in ink becomes a promise written in the heart. And sometimes the door you weren't meant to open leads precisely where you were always meant to be.